In 1990, Pretty Woman dazzled audiences with fairy tale romance, bright smiles, and playful charm, but behind the scenes, chaos shaped many of the film's most iconic moments. One example is the famous bubble bath sequence, where Vivian sings loudly to Prince's "Kiss." On screen, the scene looks carefree, yet the bathtub was filled not with ordinary soap but industrial-strength detergent designed to maintain giant, camera-friendly foam under hot studio lights. After hours submerged, Julia Roberts' skin began to burn and the harsh chemical stripped the red dye from her hair. Her stylist found orange streaks the next morning, forcing production to halt while her color was repaired. And then came the prank. During a take where she dunked her head underwater, the entire crew quietly slipped out. When she emerged, she was completely alone, her startled reaction utterly real. Her laughter afterward wasn't scripted, it was relief, exhaustion, and a needed escape from the grueling shoot. The glittering fantasy audiences adored was born from a story far darker than anyone expected. J.F. Lawton's original script, bluntly titled $3,000, was a grim and gritty drama, not a romantic comedy. Vivian wasn't bubbly or hopeful, she was written as a struggling sex worker battling trauma, addiction, poverty, and the cold indifference of a city that judged worth through wealth. Edward wasn't charming or conflicted, he was a ruthless corporate raider who viewed people as assets to exploit. Their week together ends not with a kiss, but with a transaction. He hands her money, she walks away, and the script cuts to silence. When Disney acquired the film, executives demanded a complete tonal transformation. They removed the bleakness, softened the characters, and rewrote the ending into a modern Cinderella tale. Vivian's vulnerability became wit, Edward's cruelty became emotional detachment, and tragedy was replaced with redemption. A harsh cautionary tale transformed into a timeless Hollywood fantasy. Today it's impossible to imagine Pretty Woman without Julia Roberts, yet she was nearly removed from the film altogether. At just 21, still relatively unknown, Roberts was considered too raw and too intense for Disney's polished romantic vision. While she fit perfectly in the original gritty script, the new fairy tale tone made executives fear she lacked glamour. High-profile actresses, Meg Ryan, Daryl Hannah, Michelle Pfeiffer, were considered as replacements. For several tense weeks, Roberts was unofficially out of the film. But director Gere Marshall refused to compromise. He saw something in her auditions, an ability to blend fragility with light, and insisted she was the film's emotional anchor. Even after she was brought back, pressure consumed her. Crew members described how she trembled before takes, developed hives from stress, and struggled with overwhelming nerves. But once the camera rolled, her fear turned into warmth on screen. The vulnerability that worried Disney became the heartbeat of the movie. One of the most iconic Pretty Woman scenes, Edward snapping the jewelry box shut and Julia Roberts bursting into laughter, was completely unscripted. During rehearsals, the moment lacked spontaneity. Julia was tense, the mood stiff. Director Gere Marshall leaned toward Richard Gere and whispered, "Surprise her." When the camera rolled and Julia reached forward to admire the necklace, Gere clicked the box shut suddenly. Her gasp and laughter were 100% real. Marshall shouted, "That's the one," and the take went straight into the final cut. Hidden behind this charming moment, however, was an expensive secret. The necklace wasn't a prop but an actual Fred Jolier piece worth over $250,000, guarded by two armed security officers just off camera. Each time Gere held it, a jeweler's representative watched like a hawk. Behind Vivian's charming shyness was Julia Roberts' very real anxiety. As a young actress carrying a major studio film, she constantly felt the pressure of living up to expectations, especially after nearly being replaced. Crew members recall that before emotional or romantic scenes, her hands would shake so badly she often held props with both hands to hide the nervous tremors. Her lips quivered moments before action, forcing makeup artists to redo her lipstick repeatedly. In one early love scene, her heart raced so intensely that veins became visible on her forehead, and filming had to stop. Director Gere Marshall didn't push her. Instead, he sat beside her, cracked jokes, told stories, and reminded her to breathe. When she finally delivered the scene, her vulnerability turned into cinematic magic. The charm audiences saw wasn't an act, it was Julia transforming fear into authenticity. Her real-life uncertainty became the emotional core of Vivian Ward. Richard Gere, the refined businessman Edward Lewis, almost never joined the film. Known for serious roles, he dismissed Pretty Woman as a lightweight fantasy and repeatedly declined the part. Gary Marshall, determined to bring him on board, arranged a meeting between Gere and Julia Roberts in New York. Gere was polite but clearly uninterested, until Roberts scribbled a note on a post-it and slid it to him, "Please say yes." Gere later said he felt an immediate spark when he looked into her eyes. Minutes after she left the room, he phoned Marshall to accept the role. A lesser-known fact, the piano piece Edward plays in the hotel wasn't scripted. Gere, a lifelong musician, composed and performed it himself the night before shooting. Though he later admitted that the film's glorification of wealth made him uneasy, that inner discomfort helped shape Edward's complex, guarded demeanor, making the character resonate even more deeply with audiences. Despite the film's smooth, luxurious aesthetic, the production was filled with near disasters. Take the driving scenes. Julia Roberts barely knew how to drive, yet the script required her to take control of Edward's sleek Lotus. What looks breezy on screen was actually a nerve-wracking ordeal. Roberts stalled the car repeatedly, jumped curbs, and once nearly scraped a limousine. Crew members stood just outside the frame, ready to grab the steering wheel if things went wrong. Even the car itself has a dramatic backstory. Porsche and Ferrari refused to lend vehicles, fearing the film's adult themes would tarnish their brands. Lotus, struggling with low visibility at the time, agreed, and Pretty Woman tripled their global sales. Many street scenes were filmed guerrilla style without full permits, with crew rushing to set up and then disappearing before crowds or police arrived. The glossy fantasy was built from moments of frantic improvisation and controlled chaos. The Disney-fied version of Pretty Woman we know was shaped by many deleted scenes, moments shot, edited, and then buried because they revealed too much of the story's darker origins. One removed sequence showed Vivian grappling with the addiction she had in the original script, sitting alone, counting crumpled bills, numbing her fear with substances while a broken television flickered in the background. Executives called it a magic killer and cut it instantly. Another scrapped ending showed Edward coldly paying Vivian and leaving her behind, mirroring the bleak original arc. Test audiences hated it. They didn't want realism, they wanted redemption. Other missing moments included a harsher shopping humiliation scene and an argument that portrayed Edward far less sympathetically. Disney referred to these removals as tone corrections, but to those on set, they were a reminder of the film that almost existed, raw, painful, and far from a fairy tale.